Hello everyone, welcome on this webinar on how the new Autodesk solution can make an architect's life easier. My name is Andrzej Samsonowicz. I'm a technical sales specialist with Autodesk. I'm an architect from my education. I'm also a computational design expert. I have very extensive experience with Revit and building information modeling technology. I'm based in Warsaw, Poland, and if you want to reach me and get in touch with me, see some videos that I'm publishing on YouTube, just reach me on YouTube or on LinkedIn. I'm gonna talk about some. So basically, Autodesk is selling its software in a group called AC Collection, which it's a bundle. It's a group of software which are dedicated for the building industry. This software is the main purpose of putting the software in one bundle, in one group, is to make them cooperate and to make the workflow between these different software very smooth and efficient. I'm gonna also speak about BIM 360, about the cloud solution, which is even making this entire workflow even more complete. I'm not gonna talk about every single software from AC Collection because it would be, we don't have time here in this webinar. So I'm gonna mainly talk about, software like Formit for the conceptual design, Revit for, it's a BIM modeler, so for basically creating the main source of truth. I'm also talk about software like Infraworks, Civil 3D, and of course a little bit of computational design software called Dynamo, which is basically linking software like Formit, Revit, and Civil 3D into one. It allows these software to collaborate and to communicate even more efficiently. So I'm going to start with the site and survey part. So basically the very beginning of the project delivery. I'm going to talk about something which has been released quite recently. It's a new connectivity, new type of workflow which allows users working on a software called Civil 3D, so ingredient part of AC Collection, and to basically push the data that has been created in Civil 3D into Revit. And the purpose, the reason why I'm speaking about that, because now because Civil 3D is a dedicated software for anything that is to be done with the terrain modeling. So basically the software it's dedicated for, of course, for the professional land surveyors, for road designers, but even though so the effect that you have in Revit can be much more advanced and professional than if you're working in Revit alone and you're modeling the terrain in Revit. All this happens with the help of BIM 360, so you need to have BIM 360 in order to push and to basically enable this workflow. So to push the design in a very sophisticated way, in a professional way, model terrain in Civil 3D and to have it in Revit as a native geometry. So I'm gonna push you this video. I'm not gonna maybe run entire video, just the end, because this is the most important. But the thing is that, as you can see here, this is a software which has a lot of tools for terrain design, for even it's just for the professional landshaping, and the person working on Civil 3D can take this model, push it to the clouds, to push it as a DWG to BIM 360, then even open it in the browser and see this model terrain before you push it to Revit. So here we can see all basically volumes, the terrain. We can see, what's the design, what's the context, and then in Revit, you can basically, this is a brand new, has been added really recently. You can take this terrain and basically load it into Revit as a native geometry. This is the most important, right? And here you can see, so basically this gives you some tools and some flexibility that Revit did not have and doesn't have. So basically this way how you can work with terrains, with the slopes, with volumes and so on, is adding to Revit a new, very effective way of working, right? This was very difficult to be created or to be done in Revit before. So now it's much more efficient. Okay, this is when you are talking about site and surveying, it's worth of mentioning that this AC collection, so this group of Autodesk software, is also includes software like Infraworks for very this is like a conceptual design software which is able to edit very big geometries, so you can rotate easily and edit very large geometries, and you can really make your projects on a very large scale. But the thing is that it happens really quickly. So for example, all these volumes of buildings that you see on this first picture on the left, this is all based on some publicly available data sources, databases. So you don't have to. The thing is that you don't have to model each single element manually, but it is being actually automatized through some publicly available databases. For example, these terrain, the model terrain, and these, for example, these fields and little roads that you can see here in the countryside. This is all that comes either from services like Google Maps, or if some local government is publishing some more detailed maps, some more detailed data sets, databases. Infraworks is also basically reading. Actually, it's very Infraworks doesn't have that many tools that allow you to shape you or to model buildings manually. It's all about some external databases, which makes the entire process much quicker. I'm gonna show you some video in a moment about that software. Then we have, of course, Civil 3D, again part of AC collection, which is a professional AutoCAD based software for shaping the terrain in a more detailed way. So you have it's based, it can be the software can use some external databases of topo information and parcels of land. So you can basically, there's a lot of things that can also can be generated some kind of automatically, but above all, this is AutoCAD based software for professional and very detailed land shaping. So you have a lot of tools that allow a person who is doing it, let's say professionally, make it basically make the best use of this software and its tools. And again, it's AutoCAD based, so it's probably for many people it's not that difficult to learn. And there's a lot of materials around the internet on how to use Civil 3D. Civil 3D is also based. It's present on the market. So Autodesk is selling this software for years. Then, of course, we have Revit, which is again, of course, part of AC collection, which allows, of course, to be more specific, more detailed. So it allows you to basically to model buildings in a much more detailed way and to visualize this. You're gonna see some videos in a moment, so I'm not gonna talk too much about it now. And then, of course, you can get again Infraworks. So if you're planning, even a quarter of residential buildings, you can use, some very precise land land shaping, basically made with Civil 3D, then push it, your buildings, your conceptual design, again made in Revit to Infraworks. And then what is also important is that you can make this high level and high detailed model in Infraworks. And Infraworks is also, maybe this is what I should said at the very beginning when it's talking about the Infraworks, it's a very effective way for public hearing. So if you want, for example, in a very, very like nice and aesthetic way, and also user friendly, you can show it to your investor or a person who wants to see some result in a context. So this is about, again, a little bit about the Infraworks. So we have this model builder, which allows you to read the external databases and to transform them into a model in Infraworks. Then again, Revit. So you can based on the data set that's on model terrain that you are getting, that you're creating in Civil 3D, you can make your your project in Revit and get the first visualization in how this will look like before you can start, even before you step down to create more details of the building. And then at the end, you're importing this into Infraworks to have the basically the general overview of how this project looks like in a context. Okay, so but now let's go to be more specific, and let's talk a little about conceptual design. So what I want to emphasize during this webinar is actually some very new things that has been added, and there's this software called Formit, again part of AC collection, dedicated for conceptual design for architects. And this software recently has some new things has been added to the software. I'm gonna start to talk from so the performance has been improved. So you have this ability to work on a very, very detailed geometries that as you could see here, the software is able, and you can rotate very, very complex models with a high level of detail. You can also, which is super cool in my eyes, you can open the same model on the iPad, because basically what you're doing is you're saving your main model that you're using on the desktop version of Formit. You're saving on the cloud, and then you can reach and read this model with an iPad. But this is of course not all. So talking about the very high, let's say, conceptual phase, high level conceptual phase, you can take this model and again bring it to Infraworks. This is probably the video presenting how the Infraworks is reacting on a building, on a model of with a lot of geometry. So you see that how smooth it is, and this is basically Formit model imported into Infraworks. But I think that the most interesting things will come in a moment. So basically, what has been also added is that you can control parameters like ambient contrast or ambient brightness, which basically add to the software a lot of you have a lot of flexibility in controlling the depth of shade, all the colors, how dark they are, but above all you're gonna saw something, for example, shadow intensity. But what is also very important is that if you move this parameter, ambient brightness, then you can turn your building into something completely dark, something completely black, and then you can work. Basically, you can make the black things a layer which allow later on, if you're working on Photoshop, for example, then you can make it much more. You can create very, very nice visualizations with the background which can be customized. So you can basically cut off the building which turn blacks. So if you use this parameter, you can put it on the layer, and then you can, in Photoshop you can put something completely different in the background. So there is this kind of, you can also somehow control, as you could see in the background, there is a way to control also if you're satisfied with this kind of sky, for example, you can still keep it and then, for example, change these colors in order to make it more, to have this depth of let me go further. So another enhancement in Formit, again part of AC collection, so you have it already. If you have AC collection, you also have Formit, is this ability to create orthogonal views. So you can create, a plan view quite easily. Then if I go, I can also open the front view, so you can create elevation views for very quick conceptual, very quickly creating some, nice looking, good looking elevation views. So what also is possible is that you can take this and export it to, for example, to as image as JPEG, export it, right? It's and just matter of, and you're gonna see that also the creating this model in Formit is really can be really fast. It is not so. Of course, it's something which is complementary to Revit, so it's not something which is supposed to be replace Revit. Of course not. Revit has a completely different, let's say, use in this process. So, but if you need to create very quickly, and Formit has a lot of tools, a lot of features that allow to model, to create some conceptual, volumes and studies, volume studies very quickly and very efficiently. And it also has some additional integration, which I'm going to discuss now, which makes this process even faster than before. So recently has been, so Formit was integrated with Dynamo, so with this visual programming tool, and having a visual programming like Dynamo integrated with Formit gives, makes this really basically you have unlimited, of course in abbreviation marks, but a lot of new possibilities of using, for example, integrating AutoCAD files into on a very conceptual phase, or even integrating Excel on this at this phase. So a lot of new possibilities that make this conceptual phase much faster and easier. So let me play this video for you. So what happens here is that this is Formit, right? So I have this conceptual, I have this volume basically, right? So nothing special. There's a lot of software that you can make such a volume with. But here, I'm gonna open this icon here, and here I'm gonna stop for the moment this video. So basically here I have this, these two icons, facade and staircase, and these are basically Dynamo scripts, which I have created before with Dynamo, and basically once the script is being placed in a folder which is specified here, Formit is basically reading the script and automatically converting something, so the procedures which I have written in Dynamo, into a geometry. Of course, this webinar is not meant to explain how to make the script in Dynamo, because we cannot dedicate this webinar for Dynamo. But so if you want to watch, there's a lot of materials on YouTube on how to make use of Dynamo. But Dynamo is a super efficient and really powerful tool to customize different things, from modeling to automatizing some processes in Revit, for example. And again, that it's a visual programming tool, and it's now we have it integrated with Formit, with Revit, with Civil 3D. So it gives you a lot of potential. So what I did in Dynamo, I have created this piece of facade, this sample of a facade, So, and this basically behaves here in Formit a little bit like it was a kind of a parametric family. Right now, what we have to do is, of course, we have to position my this facade here on the side of the building, and if I double click into this, before I double click, of course, I can also tell you that we have, for example, this profile made with AutoCAD. Let's change something in this profile, and then once I have changed something in AutoCAD, I'm gonna now edit. As you can see here, Dynamo is being popped out. You can see the script. Again, I'm not gonna discuss. It looks might look very difficult, but it's not. I'm gonna reload my DWG profile. I'm gonna run it and look what happens. I'm gonna save it. Okay, I'm gonna close Dynamo, and then I have changed the profile and the DWG profile. One profile, like I can also link much more DWGs here, and my facade, my profile of the facade has been updated, right? So it works like a very sophisticated automatized. Like using the Revit terminology, it works a little bit like parametric family, right? Now what I can also do, I can again double click my my family in a quotation mark. I can open again my script, and what I can do here, I can go and substitute another basically external data. So in this case, I have prepared an Excel sheet with the name. The sheet is called version 1, like you see here. And what this, and I'm going to stop for the moment. So what this represents is, for example, I want to use Excel to control the rhythm of my facade, right? The rhythm of panels. So these numbers represent the length of the panel. So I have the panel of 0.5, 0.75 meter, 1 meter, and so on. Here, what happens here is I'm not gonna discuss too much in technical things in depth, but this is what happens here is just I'm calculating the sum of this basically of this rhythm. So it's like 0.5 plus 0.75, it's 1.25, and if you sum up all these numbers here, it's 13.5, which makes basically the length of my facade, of the side of the building, right? Now you can see it. It's I'm gonna save it again, like before. Here I can also control, the height of the facade, the sill height, so any kind of a parameter. And then if I hit run on Dynamo, Dynamo is executing the script and creating me this solid, right? Of course, this solid is made of other solids, so I can later on also control what is panel, what is mullion, and so on, right? So here I'm minimizing, and I have perfectly, adjusted piece of the facade. I can do the same with another type, but what you could see here is, okay, let me rotate that. So I'm placing it manually. So what happens here is I'm gonna edit again, but what happens here is that this is another instance of this family, parametric family. So it will be treated as a kind of separate element, and here I'm gonna substitute version 1 with version 2, right? So I'm gonna here version 2, right? Again, here I'm gonna also change the rhythm, so the length of panels. Okay. I'm gonna save again. also save the script and run it. Okay, and Dynamo is generating the entire solid for me. I'm gonna save it, close it, and as you could see here, it's being automatically very quickly updated in Formit, right? So I have two pieces, two types of the rhythm in my facade. Okay, let me also create the third one in a moment, and I'm doing the third one in order to show you something quite important, because okay, now I will have the third type of the facade with different with another different rhythm, and I'm doing this because basically I have clicked on this Dynamo icon and I dropped it here and drag and dropped it. So I have basically this process of selecting Dynamo icon here on Formit makes that I'm creating a separate independent instance of the facade, right? And of course, as you could imagine, this I'm showing you this example of the facade, but Dynamo and basically this workflow can be used for anything. It doesn't have to. It's not meant for facade design. It's for anything. It's a super versatile and universal workflow. So the thing is that now I have created 3 instances, but some of them were copied. Okay, and this basically. Let me also create some layers. So you also have the possibility to create layers in Formit, of course. So I have mass, glass, and mullions. Right, and here I can again edit my my geometry. I don't have to enter Dynamo and the script. Now I can assign these geometries, and everything here is not. Basically it's planned, right? So even the fact that you have separate, basically each facade has 2 solids, or 2 groups of solids, right? Here I have glasses, so basically panels, and a separate mullion, and separate layer is, and also separate solid is dedicated for mullions. And here I can take some materials, even for example from Revit. Okay, we will have the common materials. Okay, can of course also scale it so it looks more real. First you define the material, and then let me turn off the glass so I have a control what I'm selecting. I'm using tab, or in this case I'm editing a group, so everything in the background is inactive, and here I can assign a material. And what happens, as you could see here, is that I have the same basically material on the bottom and on the top, right? And this because I have copied the instance of the facade. Basically I have created a family with a Dynamo script, kind of a family, and I have copied it twice. So that's why it allows me to basically, and I'm gonna just do something else here. I'm gonna define a color of this panel. I'm gonna basically change it from like a transparent glass to red glass, right? And what this made is that this change also has been propagated and updated in the other copy of this instance, right? And I can do the same thing for remaining facades. So you can very, very fast and very quickly you can get this kind of result, right? It's really a matter of probably less than an hour to make this facade, if you have of course the Dynamo script, which is able to generate the geometry based on some based on Dynamo script. But this is not all, because what this process, actually this workflow, gives you a lot of flexibility. What I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna now turn off the visibility of my facade, of my glass and mullions, and I'm gonna modify the volume, the original volume, the conceptual volume, right? So as you could see, I've tracked a vertex of this volume up, so you can see that now, of course, the facade has to be somehow updated in a very, it becomes a little bit more complicated, right? But what can be done here now is that I can ungroup, so I can basically explode this kind of instance created in with the script, and now I can start to modify every single, like completely manually, every single element that has been, created with Dynamo. And using a there's this command called flatten, and if you flatten, basically you're selecting the first surface, and then you can update or align. It works. It should be called align, but it's called flatten. And basically, it allows you to to basically align multiple surfaces. Right. It's called flatten. And the shortcut, as far as I remember, is FL in Formit. Right. And the great thing is that you can really you can select first surface. As you could see here, there was this top surface selected, and now I can select. So basically, you're selecting a list of surfaces, and the first one will be the hosts, and all the others will adjust and update to the first one that you're selecting. See? And in a couple of clicks, I have this kind of facade. And of course, I can also control. Once I have my geometry created, generated by Dynamo in Formit, then I can, even without exploding it, I still have, access to, because of course now this inclined facade, if I would like to, change it in with Dynamo, then of course I'm by exploding it, I'm also losing the associativity with the Dynamo script. So also let's say the fact that it's parametric is being lost when you explode it. Right. There are other examples that you can also create stairs. Revit users might sometimes we can Revit users complain about how the stairs are working in Revit. Sometimes you don't have that much flexibility, but now with the script you can create basically the stairs absolutely working like you want. Like there is no basically any limit, right? So we can have something which is repetitive like this one, and it's monolithical. Or you can create something which will be somehow split, or something with a lot of exceptions, like with some steps, that the first steps will be different than the last one, and so on. So you can think about completely customized, again, parametric family. So here, sometimes if of course, Formit is being meant to work on with volumetrics, right? So if I, for example, want to do something more specific, like if I want to imagine a floor plan, then I have to use some tools, like for example the section, right? So this blue plane works like a section, so it's basically cutting my building on some certain quota. And now what I can do is I can, as you can see here on the right hand side, I have a list of furnitures, and the super important thing is that these furnitures are common for Revit and Formit. So I have some same let's say group of families which can be used by Formit and by Revit, and they are not, you don't have to remember about converting them. This is what happens for you in the background. And you can think about making it for for furniture, but also for like parking lots, whatever. There are some certain limitations, but no. So what happens now? Now I'm importing into Revit my Formit model, right? I'm gonna open it. It's gonna be, it's very, it's bringing it here. If I go and say I want, turn off, for example, the visibility of my mass, because the volumetrics that was created in Formit has been brought here and saved as a mass. The families, so the facades, these facades, if I click it, you can see these are families, generic model family. I also have, when exporting to Revit in Formit, I have the possibility to select what kind of category will it be. Materials are being conserved brought back here. I have this. These are like a regular Revit families, right? I can I cannot change them that much in Revit. I don't have all this. Of course, these families have been created elsewhere. So Revit is basically doesn't have access to the methods that has been used to create that family. But nevertheless, I still can simply delete something or there's possibility of slight modification. Here, I can also again start using this mass, this volumetrics that came from from Formit to Revit, and to create some regular Revit elements based on that. I can also go and say I want to, for example, create a shaft opening here. From the first level to the last one, apply, confirm. So basically I have my staircase very quickly with already openings in a ceiling. Of course, if I turn off the visibility of mass, then it becomes maybe a little more appealing. And then what is also important is that if I make a section here, this is like this all becomes a native geometry, right? Right, so you can basically measure it, put the quotations, put the dimensions. Right, it's like a regular part of the Revit model, right? So, and of course, don't forget that we have placed this furniture, right, in Formit. So if you zoom it in, if I click on it, it's being interpreted as a regular furniture, right? So you don't have to change anything or convert anything. Right? Okay. So let me go further. So this is really great. Remember, Formit is a tool for conceptual, very quick volumetrical studies. In Plus, you have this integration with Dynamo, which adds an extra possibilities to, let's say, to the very very simple to use, very intuitive conceptual design software. What I want to also to add, and maybe I have forgotten at the beginning, is that yes, you've seen this video at the very beginning where I was opening the Formit model on the iPad, basically on mobile device, and yes, you can. It works for both Apple's operating system like Android, so you can also have it on different tablets, not only iPad. But what is also possible, what is also important is that this Formit version on tablet, it's not just for viewing the model; it's also for modeling. So if you open it and if you have a try and download it from either App Store or Google Store. So basically, if you get one of these versions of Formit on a mobile device, you can also really create something on it. It doesn't have that many tools like the desktop version of. And by the way, the desktop version is part of AC Collection, so it's like a commercial version, while the one on the web browser and the one on the mobile device is free of charge. Right? It's just something free tool, and of course you don't have Dynamo integration. You don't have some additional tools, but at least for viewing, at least for making some corrections, not markups because you don't have such a tool there, but let's say some small enhancements of your model. So Formit is a really great tool, and we maybe it's not that popular, and like for example SketchUp, of course, because this is probably the first thing that makes you thinking that what is it, it is similar, of course. Yeah. Okay, let's go to analysis, and again Formit also has some nice tools that allow you to make the solar analysis. which very quickly tells you, what effect your conceptual design, conceptual model has on the surroundings. So you can see this, colorful map very quickly. It also can be used. So the solar analysis can be also used for different scale, much smaller scale, when you can, for example, see what effect on your facade will have this kind of shading, solar shade, right? So all this kind of it's very, of course, very easy to use, and this of course, the solar analysis is meant for a larger scale analysis, not for but you can also use it here, right? So it gives you some idea on how your sun shaders or brise are working and what effect they have on your facade. Finally, if you go to Revit, we have this software. It's not software. It's a part of Revit called Insight 360. It is a what we have to remember is that, of course, this is not Insight 360 is not really paying attention on let's say local standards and how to perform, for example, energy optimization, energy analysis. It's based on basically so the software basically is looking at your building very, very globally, very holistically, and it, as you could see here in the middle, I have this green or orange or red circle with different number. So this number is can be compared to a grade, so a mark grade, and basically based on how your building is, what kind of geometry does it have, where it's located on the map, how it's located versus north and south, what is the percentage of glazing on your facade, what kind of, and basically on these important this parameters, the cloud, because it's based on cloud, basically computing power, Insight 360 is giving you a number, a grade. So the lower the grade is, the better building will perform in terms of the energy consumption. And this is not all. And what is might be a little bit problematic is that it's based on. So basically, what you can do is you can assign a heater inside of this building, very, very, again, approximately, because you're not positioning any object, but you're just specifying that some rooms, some zones of the building are using central heating, and then the central heating and the performance of the central heating is based on American standards, which are slightly different than these Europeans, which makes can be, maybe I'm too harsh, a little bit too harsh, but of course it can be problematic. But remember that this is some very meaningful number that that we are getting here. So, for example, if you are working on different stages of your conceptual stages of your building, of your design, it can give you some very, very useful idea on, like, for example, that building type A with this geometry is performing better than building type B with the other geometry. This can be used very effectively as a basically as a comparison tool. Which version of your project will be performing better, right? But even though, remember that this is and by the way, look also on the units that are presented here. It's like it's USD dollars, basically divided on square feet per year, right? So of course this is not really let's say it doesn't really correspond to European units, but nevertheless, when it comes to comparison, this is you can really effectively compare your versions of your project. Then if we go to solar radiation, then it's a little bit different, because solar radiation is not it's first of all, it's calculating only the daylight, so basically the natural light. It's very, very precise, so you're getting a very, very precise maps of illumination inside your building, inside your project. So this is already something which is not really, it's physics, right? So it's not really depending on some standard. So you get some real and comprehensive data of daylight. The same for solar radiation. So basically this is the same tool like we are having in Formit, so it's again pure physics. And again, heating and cooling loads, so this is related to the building energy that I was mentioning. It's again, this is based on the performance and the effectiveness of the equipment based on, that is, equipment which is heating or cooling based on American standards. But nevertheless, it can be again used for comparison, to compare different versions. Okay. One more thing when it comes to analysis. So we have this new, very interesting tool added in 2020 version of Revit, and what it does is basically it's analyzing the shortest distance between different, let's say, points. So for example, if you want to calculate what's the evacuation route from whatever, from this chair to to this whatever staircase, or if you're analyzing, for example, this hospital and you have nurse stations and different patients rooms, then it tells you how much time does it take to get there, as you could see here in seconds, and it's there is a very let's say sophisticated algorithm behind that, how to calculate such a how to optimize such a road, such a path, and you can apply also the filters, so you can see that some paths are very, very long, so it will take a lot of time for example, a nurse to reach some patients. You can also define what are the obstacles for your analysis, so what are really where this this path has to somehow turn in order to avoid. Right, so it's for those of you that been using Dynamo, you probably have seen that there were a lot of nodes, a lot of scripts also being discussed on internet, that this analysis were being done in with Dynamo, and now you have this let's say tool out of the box inside Revit 2020. So it has been added in 2020. Documentation, let's pass to this. Okay, so the good thing is that in 2020 version of Revit, again, we have some nice enhancements, which allows you to import PDF. Finally, we have PDF in Revit as well. What is also important is that this PDF is not just a plain drawing. It's there's some intelligence behind. So if you place it in Revit, you can see that it's not at the first glance, at the first move, it's not snapping, but if you click on it, if you go to properties, you can turn on the snaps. Okay, so you can turn on snapping, and if you turn on snapping, or you even have this icon on the ribbon. But anyways, if you turn it on, then you can start snapping, and then you can, for example, measure it, or even start placing some elements, some Revit walls, for example, based on that. This video shows that in a moment, right? So if I go wall, for example, I'll select some type of wall, the location line, and then I can, for example, start placing walls or other elements based on, or grids, for example, based on PDF file, like here. And of course, I'm not gonna play this entire video because maybe it's already giving you an idea how does it work. Basically, it works like if you had a DWG file in linked to Revit. Okay. So yeah, then you can of course place door based on that. So a regular link, again, it works like you had a DWG link basically now. Okay, so let me stop that. So this is the PDF in Revit. Now, when it comes to documentation section that we were just discussing, what Dynamo, you've seen the example of Dynamo being used in Formit for, creating a solids, right? These, let's say, the geometry that represents intelligent parametric geometry that represents a facade, right? But here I'm going to present you some other examples on how Dynamo can be used, right? For example, and Dynamo, of course, here you can see that there is a list of views, right? We don't have yet any sheets, but I can use this Dynamo player, and this Dynamo player basically is something that I don't have to, we can expect that some users, some people maybe are too scared to use Dynamo, but maybe it might look too complicated for them. But here we can use Dynamo player to, to execute a script in the background without opening it. But with, so if I click on edit inputs, you can, for example, this script will take my views and place them automatically on sheets. Of course, this is just a proof of concept again, right? So it's, and I'm here, I am just selecting, I'm typing in these views which I want to exclude from. Maybe not all the views I want to place on my sheets, right? Maybe some are just work in progress or something like that, right? So I'm running. I just played on run, and what this did is it created me a sheets, automatically created sheets, and automatically placed views on it, right? So great example of that you can have a very effective tool, an effective workflow of controlling if everything is, all the views have been placed on sheets. Now, as you could see here, I played again. So this kind of play works also as a kind of a trigger, because if I hit on play, first it's, it places the views, and if I leave these views to exclude blank, all the views will be placed on sheets, and if I play again, they will be deleted. So it works like kind of a trigger. So once I play, it places on, it creates the sheets and places on the views. If I play it again, then it removes everything. This is how I did it. You can of course think about different methods. It doesn't have to be like that, but so I created, because for example here I'm not satisfied with the result, let's say, and I want to place all my views, right? So he's gonna place everything on sheets, right? So if I open it, I have, of course, the script also assigning the sheet name and the sheet number. And the thing is, of course, that it's placing the views on sheets. The kind of, let's say, maybe imperfection of this workflow is that it's placing the views in some specific locations of the sheet which I don't have control over. So it will always start from this left lower corner. So later I would have to somehow to make it more, looking better. Probably I have to take physically and distribute them, along the sheet. So it's not nesting the views on the sheet, right? So it's just placing it one after another. But what it also does, it creates multiple sheets and creates multiple views and places multiple views on this sheet. So it's not just one. You can basically think about the entire project, about entire Revit file, and then you can basically, so it allows you to control if all the sheets has been placed correctly on all the views on sheets, and then you can manually basically adjust a little bit, just the position of views on sheets. And then, of course, with Dynamo you can do much more, because Dynamo is, it's a kind of a language, right? So programming language, but it, you can learn it even if you don't have any programming background. It's because so visual, so easy to learn, and so logical. But then you can think about using Dynamo for much more different, let's say, things. Like for example, you can see if all the panels that you are having on your facade are flat, so if they're fabricable, because you can control, because basically every element that Dynamo is basically editing you can extract XYZs, the coordinates, right? So you can, for example, extract something which in Revit is out of the box, Revit out of the box, pure Revit. It's very difficult to sometimes to get is to I want to get XYZs, the real coordinates of some element. And Revit alone is not able to do that, but you can do it with Dynamo. It's actually very easy, also script to make it. Then, of course, you can think about imagine that you have a parking, right? And then something changes in that parking, and these parking lots have some numeration, right? And then you have to basically, in Revit, you have to, if something changes, you have to renumerate everything from scratch, basically from the beginning, right? Manually. These tasks sometimes can be very, very tedious and time-consuming. In Dynamo, to make that script a little bit, of course, a little bit more complicated than extract vertices and extract XYZs, that you can create a script. Again, I'm sorry, we don't have time here to discuss every little thing, but if you look on internet, you'll find a lot of this kind of information and even hints how to make such a script. But you can renumerate. Either it can be rooms, can be parking lots, can be sprinklers, lightning fixtures, everything, right? So you have very effective method to get rid of this manual and tedious works. You can use Dynamo to create, for example, automatic apartment lists, right? So if you have a residential building, you have a lot of rooms inside, but these rooms also correspond to some apartment, right? And then sometimes in Revit it's not kind of very fast to make the list of apartments. I want to have apartment, not every single room, right? And then because Dynamo has a lot of tools which allow you to control geometry, you can also use Dynamo to control if something is inside a room. For example, you can see if you are designing a hotel, for example, you can verify if all the rooms have whatever desks inside or beds, for example, or sprinklers, because bed is easy to recognize even by blank eye, but to verify, quick verification if you have a fire sprinkler in every room, this kind of stuff, right? And then, of course, as you could see here on one of these first videos with Formit and Dynamo integration, there is also a Excel integration, which allows you to this is the endless use cases of how you can use Excel to both read the data, like we did on the video with Formit, but also you can extract the data. You can push the data from Revit or from Formit to the Excel sheet, right? And to make the schedule, and to make and of course the schedule be a dynamic, right? So once the Dynamo is, you can put the execution mode to automatic in Dynamo, and then anything that changes in your model will be automatically updated in the Excel sheet. Okay. Collaboration. This is the last section, and I want to show you some interesting video in which we're gonna work with BIM 360 design, part of BIM 360 set of tools of products, and we're gonna work on one model, Revit model, in different locations. Here, this example is between Paris and Rome, but it can be Warsaw, whatever, Prague or Bucharest or whatever. It's just, or even within one location. Basically, you can work with someone from your neighborhood and work on one Revit model. Some of you might have heard before about a solution called Revit Server. Revit Server was meant to be used and to to collaborate and to share the Revit model within certain network specification between basically a network in one company, because Revit Server was meant for big companies which have different locations, but they work in one VPN or one, let's say, network. If you are using Revit Server with in different network settings, yes, it might work, but it's very complicated and might be very complicated to from the, let's say, IT point of view. So it can be really, and also can become very expensive. You want to maintain Revit server working in different network locations, not in, let's say, not within one firewall. And BIM 360 basically resolves this problem. This is you don't have to have any IT support for that. No infrastructure needed, just internet. Because Revit server, coming back a little bit more to the Revit server also requires some additional, has some additional requirements, like for example some dedicated version of Windows Server and so on. So there is some IT costs hidden behind. Meanwhile, here with BIM 360 design, it's basically gone. The only thing that you need is internet, nothing else. So what happens here is that you are having a central model in the cloud. So for those of you that are using maybe work sharing in the local network, in the office, without again using internet, just a local network, it will be very, very familiar, well, similar. But the thing which is very different here is that while you're publishing a central model in the cloud, you're also creating a kind of a spectrum of your model, or let's say kind of a digital twin, which can be also viewed on, because since you are pushing your Revit model into the cloud, into BIM 360, you can also see and explore your model on the browser, on the regular browser like Chrome or Firefox. You're opening a Revit model in a browser, which means that of course you cannot modify, so you cannot add a wall on the browser version of your model, of your Revit model, but you can comment and you can communicate and you can basically communicate and read the model without Revit, without any Revit software installed on your computer. It's just you're reading a Revit model from the browser. Okay, how does it work? Okay, imagine that we have an architect working on some tower. Okay, here I have my tower, and of course in my Revit model I do have as well a lot of sheets with sections, with axonometric views. As I have a regular complete Revit model here, right? With the schedules as well. Now, if I go to I'm not gonna discuss every technical step, but so basically there is with BIM 360 design, you're exporting this model into the browser, into the cloud, and then this model is being automatically converted into this browser version, right? And you have all the documents basically in the browser version, including the model. And then if an architect 2, okay, is gonna sign in, there's a second person in a completely different location, right? He's selecting, he's going to to the cloud basically, and from the cloud, directly from the cloud, he's gonna open shared model. Okay, as you could see here, there's also work sets available in this BIM 360 design collaboration method. So Architect 2 has added some different elements. He also logged in onto the browser, and he basically can see already that there is some changes has been done. And now I'm gonna stop for a moment, because what happens here is that Architect 2 is working together with Architect 1, and Architect 1 has, of course, there are some work sets, so some groups of elements that belong to Architect 1. Belong means that Architect 2 cannot, of course, because they don't, they have to work together, but they must not disturb each other, right? So Architect 2 now is gonna ask Architect 1 to relieve and to release some elements. So basically Architect 2 can place whatever doors into these core concrete walls, right? So what it's doing is that I'm gonna type in this little pin here, and under this pin you can, first of all, you can define this pin by creating a title. You can assign, a user, specific person who's gonna receive that. You can specify, you know, the date when this issue, right, this problem has been, or this kind of communication initiation has been created. What is also possible is that there's a very effective way to communicate between people, between the users, because, for example, if you are already in the, let's say that you have this Revit model and you are also having, let's say you're already working with the general contractor, and you want to, as an architect, you want to check if contractor is executing your project along, it's really following the project, right? So there are no some problems, some issues. So if you make this pin using mobile devices, because again we are here on the cloud, and this model in such detail, in such quality, can be also viewed on a telephone or on a tablet. And if you have a telephone or a tablet, almost every modern telephone is equipped with camera. So you can go on the construction site, open your Revit model, create a pin, take the picture, and this picture will be attached to this location, and then anyone can see what happens in this location, in this in reality, but with a picture linked to the technical plans, right? So I can assign that user 01 will be the recipient of this issue. I can assign different things like root cause, so what's and then I can of course type in kind of description. Hey user, please relinquish all the core walls, right? Because I need to work, I need to place some elements, right? And then we have this issue created, and then architect 1 receives an email. Okay, so he's being automatically informed, notified that there is some information for him, some issue. And then when he logs in on the browser version of BIM 360, he sees that there'll be a list of this kind of issues for him. He can click, he can basically see what kind of he can basically read all the details. He can read, he can click on document, and then automatically this pen is being basically brought to him. So the right drawing is also basically opened so you can see what kind of problems this, and you can see the correct pin, right? And then of course he can release the browser, the work set. So basically you can do in Revit model what the architect 2 has asked him for. He's gonna synchronize, so basically this change is being automatically also propagated into the cloud. The architect 2 is receiving back an information email notification that your issue has been answered. And again, you can also click on, and here he'll have also his list of issues, right? And also these issues which have been basically selected, not all, right? So you can see this, all the issues, only these issues which are really regard you, right? And here I can read also the response. It's a very, very effective way of communicating. And now I can start as an architect to place elements into these core walls that I was assigned to. So this is the door, another one door, and then after some time you can see that there is a lot of different elements here. So once he finished the work, he can synchronize his work with the cloud, so everyone else can see it. Now admin, so someone who is not really working in Revit can, or anyone like investor or some leading architect, whatever, and now they can start to explore the model. This is really great, right? Because you have basically you're still having the Revit associativity between plans and sections and 3D model, and you can still see it. And then another thing is that the architect 2 or architect 1, no matter who, they were basically creating a project, so there were a lot of versions of this project, right? And what admin or anyone else, or investor, or the leading architect who is not working on Revit because he doesn't have time, what they can see is they can basically compare what's the difference between the version 1 or the version 9, version 10 in this case, right? But what I'm interested is what happened, with my project between Sunday and and Thursday, for example. And since then, there were some changes done, and some changes were published to the cloud. And now he can, as you could see here, I can basically graphically see what is the difference. The yellow elements has been changed, green elements has been added, and the red elements have been deleted, and everything will be basically the entire story of my model. Here I can again compare also in a 3D view, which will be maybe a little more comprehensive, right? And I can say, okay, this wall has been moved from here to here, right? This door has been moved from here to here. This bookshelf has been moved from here to here. So I have a complete history of how, not only basically how my model was changed, how my Revit model was evolving. How did it grow? Right? Okay. So that was it. Thank you for watching, and hopefully to see you at the next webinar. Have a great day. Bye bye.